Okay, I know that everyone is starting to filter in from the waiting room. So we'll kick this off in just a minute as people join in. But just to give some quick introductions, my name is Megan Petsko, and I'm the director here in the Graduate Tax Program at Villanova. I'm joined today by our faculty director, Professor Stephen Olson, my colleague, Catherine Coker, Assistant Director of Admissions. And I'm really excited to have our panelists, who are all alums of the Graduate Tax Program and earned their Master of Taxation degrees, join us today so they can talk about their careers, answer some questions that we've provided, that we've kind of scoped out from what we hear from students who are interested in the MT degree, why it's important for career, how it can help advance a career. So it'll be great to get their insights. Just
Megan, you want to unmute?
Man, I said all of that on mute. I'm
That was all
sorry.
the really insightful stuff.
I am so sorry. All right, I'll start from the beginning. My name is Megan Petsko, and I'm the director of the Graduate Tax Program. As I was just sharing, but not live, I'm joined today by our faculty director, Professor Stephen Olson, and my colleague, Catherine Coker, who's the Assistant Director of Admissions. We have a great panel put together today of Villanova alum who all have earned their Master of Taxation. Just to go over some quick housekeeping items, this session is recorded. We will send it out afterwards to all who have registered. If you have any questions as they come up, as you think of them, you will see at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. You can send questions through there. We will either share them with the panelists, or if they're one-off questions, we will pose it to the panelists to answer. Professor Olson will start with some information about the program, and then we'll kick it off with the panelists from there. So Professor Olson, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Megan. I appreciate that. So we're all very thrilled to have the webinar. We're so thrilled to have these panelists, and grateful that you all joined us today over the lunch hour. In addition to being the faculty director of the program, I am also a JD grad from Villanova in 2007, and I got my LLM degree through the program in 2009. So if you provide questions to the panelists about what life's like throughout the program, I may chime in too and let you know about my experiences. So as Megan indicated, today's agenda, I'll talk just a little bit about the program, and then we'll get into the panel, have the panelists introduce themselves, and then do a little question and answer. Megan, we could switch to the next slide and just talk briefly about our program here. So today we're going to be talking about the Masters of Taxation degree that's available to those who have bachelor's degrees in accounting or in business fields, and have a demonstrated interest in the program. The program is a dual program that provides both an MT degree, but also an LLM for lawyers. And so the classes are composed of students who are both MTs and LLMs, which is one of the things that we think is really positive about the program. You're getting an education in terms of the MT from the professors, but also having other professionals from sort of a different field who approach things in a different way, that'll also be going back and forth over the same issues with you. The program for the MT consists of 30 credit hours of programming. We've got 7 or 6 core courses, and then a number of electives. With those electives, you can pick and choose all across the board, or many of our students choose to get more specifically focused into certain areas and will obtain a certificate while they're doing the MT degree. And we currently offer 3 certificates, one in employee benefits, one in estate planning, and one in state and local tax. And we're contemplating expanding that to some additional certificates in the near term. And Meg, we could switch to the next slide. So our approach to learning is that folks who are going through a program like this, especially an online program, are going to learn the most effective and efficiently if they're engaged in the process themselves. So it's not a program that is solely based on passive listening and lecture for our students. It's a problem-based program where you'll have some self-directed aspects where you have to do a bit of reading and then perhaps even watch some video content prior to the class session. Also prior to the class section, you'll be going through questions that provide instant feedback to you about whether or not you're understanding the readings that you've been doing. And then you'll also do a second set of questions that start to apply facts, fact patterns that you might see in practice to the law that you've read and learned about. There's no grading with those, although you do have to complete them, and that's all done prior to the class. And then in class, you have a live lecture that's either 60 to 90 minutes. And during that live lecture, if there's questions that people were struggling with, the professor will go over those. They'll reinforce some foundational concepts, and then they'll start doing a deep dive into the really complicated aspects that benefit from having a live instruction with the students. We also have a slightly different seminar or semester than you may be used to in the past. Instead of a full 14, 15-week semester, we've truncated our classes down to 8-week semesters. So that provides us with 6 different start dates throughout the year. So there's a spring A, spring B, summer A, summer B, fall A, fall B. And that allows a lot of flexibility for the participants in the program to choose what times of year, are best for them to be doing their learning. If you are an accountant who does a lot of tax work, for instance, and April 15 is a really difficult time for you, or you do a lot of compliance work where October, November is a really difficult time for you, you can schedule around that and not have to take classes during your busy time if you want, and still move through the program very quickly. And so a lot of our approach is to making sure that this is as efficient as possible in terms of your time. We know most people going through this program are very active professionals with busy practices, busy family lives, and then we like to incorporate as much flexibility into the program as we can. And so, Megan, with that, I think enough about the program. We can start talking about the panelists and get to the Q&A. And so, Florina, maybe you could start off and give us a little background about yourself in terms of career moves and your current position.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about professional development, especially when it comes down to a master's in tax. So to give you a little bit of background about myself, I studied accounting and management information systems at the University of Delaware. And after college, I started at PwC in their international tax practice. I was doing a mix of compliance, planning, and also some assurance support in the tax space. After a few years in public accounting, I decided to transition into a more accounting role. I wasn't exactly sure that tax was where I wanted to be. And at that point in my career, it made sense to try something else. With that said, after a year of doing accounting, I actually came back to tax. And I think if you leave tax and come back to it, you know that that's where you should be. I actually really missed being a tax professional. I missed the complexity of it. And that's when I started my role at AmerisourceBergen in tax planning and research. It'll be almost 7 years in March that I've been with AmerisourceBergen. So my current role is Director of Tax Planning and Research. I do a lot of international tax still. We have a presence in over 50 jurisdictions, but I also do a lot of domestic planning and compliance support as well. So excited to talk to you all more about my experience. I completed the master's in tax while I was at AmerisourceBergen, and can certainly speak to just how important it was in my development and to where I am today in my career.
That's awesome. Thanks, Florina. Bryan, maybe you could jump in now and tell us a little bit about your background, the career moves you've made, and where you are currently.
Absolutely, thank you. So, first started working with internal revenue. So I did that to be kind of the first step there about 9. Went to pivot accounting.
Hey, Bryan, your audio is cutting out a little bit. Are other people having that issue hearing Bryan right now?
Yeah.
Here, okay, that's others as well.
It's still cutting out. Maybe we'll just switch to Deanna real quick and she can go over her background, and maybe when we bounce
Yes.
back, the audio will be a little better.
Yeah,
So Deanna
sure.
will. Thanks.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So I completed my MST in 2017. I started out in Big Four and have had a bit of an unconventional career path ever since. I have been through a recession, mergers, acquisitions, dissolution of tax departments, a little bit unlucky, I must say, but I say all that because I think the MST really helped me navigate through all of that. But I've seen a lot. So industry, like banking, large public, small public, and now currently a medium-sized public firm doing federal, state, international provisions, compliance, and a stint in transfer pricing. So currently I work at Global Tax Management in Wayne, which is one of, I think might be the now biggest tax-only firm in the country, and I've been here for about 3 years in what they call their lead practice, which is basically the general practice, which doing pretty much all the things that I just mentioned. So
Awesome. And Florina, back to you real quick. How many people are in your tax department?
Our tax department continues to grow. We've had a lot of in acquisitions as well, but within the US, we have about 25 people.
Awesome. Well, while we give Bryan another minute to jump on, I'll start to sort of tee up what we'll talk about next. And there's a lot of research out there that shows, and everyone obviously knows anecdotally, right? Like advanced degrees are good for your career, right? There's a much faster pace to moving up the career ladder, and earnings are generally significantly higher. But a lot of folks on this panel and folks who are considering the MT probably have other options, right? They could be potentially going for an MBA or a degree in finance, other things like that. For careers in tax, though, we think the evidence shows that sort of the MT or LLM are kind of the best bang for your buck. And I guess Bryan's still not jumped on. So Florina, I'll kind of toss this to you to get to some of the specifics, but there were so many advanced degrees that you could have done. Why did you decide the MT versus one of these other paths that you could have gone down?
Yeah, it's a great question. I certainly considered other options when I was exploring what kind of higher education degree I wanted to pursue. And I think, MBA programs or maybe advanced finance or accounting degrees are great, but they're a little bit more general and they don't necessarily get to the heart of what we do day to day. So even if it's something like getting back to the basics of how do you read the Internal Revenue Code or practicing reading regulations, that's the type of curriculum that I think is really valuable. Sometimes you don't get to do those types of things in-house. You don't have time because you're just going from one project to the next, but really learning those fundamentals and then seeing different, problems and scenarios where you can apply the material that you learned was really helpful. And I think very useful for a tax professional. Not only that, but really just being able to network with other tax professionals and people in your field. There are people that were in the program when I was in the program that I still keep in touch with. As well as I would say that, the tremendous professors and faculty in the program that, you're learning from people who have seen it, experienced it, and are very close to the topics that you'll be seeing in your work day to day.
Yeah, awesome. As you all know, I teach in the program in addition to being the faculty director, and we think it's incredibly important to have a lot of adjuncts who are sort of on top of their game in the Big Four or in the government or doing policy work or big law firms. We obviously have a strong academic bench with the law professors who are also teaching the program, but it's good to have that real life experience and people who are really doing it every day. And it's one thing, as you both know, to look at the code and be like, here's what it says. And then in practice, though, how that's actually being implemented to help save people money, it's a big difference. And it's good to have folks who are doing it every day. And I was rushing from a client meeting where we were going over documents and a court meeting to get here to this webinar, but doing those things, implementing the things that I talk about in class every day. Deanna, so when you came into the program here at Villanova in the MT, you already had a lot of experience as an accountant prior to coming in. Could you talk about why you sought out getting the MT when you had that experience already? What were you looking to get out of this program?
Yeah, sure. There were a few reasons actually why I decided to seek out the MST. The seed was already kind of planted. Oddly enough, my father had gone through the program about 2 decades prior.
That's
so
awesome.
I
I
knew
didn't
about
know
it
that.
way before I went into tax. But I had a great tax director at the time, / mentor, who kind of cultivated that seed and would probably, do you think you might be interested in this? I think this would be really good for your career. And he was right. When your tax director speaks like that, I think, you listen. I felt like it was the next step after the CPA. A lot of people will say it's like the CPA. It's kind of a mark of the industry. I talked to a whole bunch of other people, and they all highly recommended it. So secondly, I think it does, like you had said, it makes you more marketable. It stands out on a resume. When you've experienced all the things that I've experienced, it certainly becomes a factor. And a lot of things can be out of your control, but this is one thing that you can control, that you can do to better control your career. But that's kind of all a bit secondary. It was all a bit secondary for me. The most important thing was to expand and deepen my tax knowledge, to be able to do my work better. Some places that I had been didn't necessarily put a giant emphasis on development, especially tax. And this so seemed like a very natural progression. As a Villanova undergrad and a self-professed Villanova nerd, there's really no other place for me to look at. Plus, I think in the area, it's the most respected program. So yeah, there's really no other place to be. But like Florina had said, networking was big. I chose to do all of my classes in person because I thought that networking, that would work best for me personally, but the networking aspect was definitely something else.
I predate the online program, which makes me feel old.
Me too.
So was your father an undergrad at Villanova too, or just graduate?
Unfortunately not. No, he was Drexel.
We won't hold it against him.
Yeah, he's got 1 degree. It's fine.
Yeah.
Not quite a supernova. Like you said. Bryan, you're back. Hopefully we've got some more stable audio.
Yeah, I apologize.
No worries. So we just jumped into a couple other questions, but you want to jump in and talk about your career, kind of where you started, where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So, my background is maybe a little more non-traditional in that I started out working for the service. It had intended that to be, kind of a short stay, but ended up being there 9 years before, I knew that I really wanted to pivot to public accounting. And not only did I want to transition to public accounting.
What were you doing for the service? Were you auditing folks?
I was an agent for them for about 9 years. So, federal, on the federal tax side. And, for some reason, state and local tax had really intrigued me. And I had, a former colleague who had made the pivot to state and local tax. And, I guess the attraction is the, federal tax, right? There's one side which is complicated enough, but then, when you look at state and local tax side of things, there's 10,000, state and local jurisdictions, and so there's never a boring day, and anytime there's uncertainty or complexity, there's an opportunity. And so I knew that transitioning to to state and local tax, I really wanted the Villanova program was attractive to me because I felt like it would not only help me to rapidly learn and get a foundation, but also adding credibility in addition to that knowledge base. So that that was appealing to me. I was able to work, then I transitioned to ended up working ultimately for Grant Thornton around a lot of great state and local tax people, and was able to just get a lot of education really in the workplace, and was a manager for Grant Thornton. About a year ago, I was given the opportunity with a smaller firm called HBK CPAs and Consultants. It's a top 50 firm, so not as big as Grant, but a lot of very interesting client base. I mean, one of the things we're like, I think the only non-big four firm that has a professional sports team or NFL football team as their client. And so I say that only because there was a lot of opportunity within the state and local tax client base, and they really had not developed a program. So I was given the opportunity to kind of run with the income franchise side of things and build that. They'd hired a principal to oversee, and then they'd hired a manager for the indirect side of things. So I feel like in addition to the education, right, the program opened doors for me to kind of have a lot of decisions that maybe, or opportunities that you may not have had before. Just getting that additional time of learning.
So I think this piggybacks off that a little bit. So you have an MT, but you also got the SALT certificate through the program?
I did, yes.
So were there particular courses in the MT or the SALT certificate that you felt like opened those doors or really helped you when you were trying to start the practice and working in that area?
Yeah, I think number one, I mean, just the professors that you interact with, I mean, are all just very respectable, kind of, people with so the network, right. I mean, having that relationship, I was able to do a lot of the classes, in person, which I liked, but I've done both. Within the state and local tax, it gave me from a state and local tax perspective, just, really a foundational understanding of a lot of the cases and things that state and local tax kind of stems from. And when you're kind of in the day-to-day grind, you don't really get an opportunity to get that high level overview or understanding. And then it also gives you, you tend to focus in state and local tax on like, my focus is income franchise, you don't get a lot of exposure to like indirect tax or sales and use. So, within the program, you get exposure to both. So it helps you just expand your knowledge and your understanding, as well as your confidence if you get that. So
June 1st, you have to mark your calendar. We're going to do half-day CLE SALT focused. There'll be a common thread that runs through all the panels.
Oh,
We're
awesome.
bringing people in from across the country, talking about some of the current developments that are going on. Professor Mike Sems, who's full-time faculty here at the university, is a big-time SALT guy. Worked in Big Four and private practice at Big Law doing SALT, and so he's spearheading it. Should be a really great program we put on.
Great.
We're excited. Yeah. So Florina, I'll jump back to you. As a sort of a leader in the tax planning and research area, for your company and for your industry, can you talk about how the MT sort of has helped you in that role and has helped your career?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question, because when I was thinking about, my time at AmerisourceBergen, when I started out is before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed. And, I had stepped away from tax for a little bit. I mainly had international tax background. So when I transitioned from Big Four consulting to an in-house role, I really felt like I needed to be a more well-rounded tax professional. And I think the master's in tax really helped me not only, see different areas on, in terms of state and local tax, like Bryan said, it improved my tax technology skills, which helped, in light of tax reform. And it gave me the tools that I needed as we saw the tax environment and the tax landscape continually change with Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, with the CARES Act, with the Inflation Reduction Act. The master's in tax really helped me, give me that confidence to say, I can figure this out, even if it's not something that I've had experience with, even if it's not something that's necessarily has been in my wheelhouse before. I have the tools now to know where to go, the resources I need. I am able to problem solve as things arise. So I think that has been really beneficial to me. I certainly think it has helped me advance my career to the director role that I'm in now. And I recommend it really to everybody that comes through AmerisourceBergen. Like Deanna said, when we look at resumes and we see, a master's in tax on someone's resume, it really differentiates them. I know, from experience what that person has gone through in terms of the curriculum, and that they have the right tools to problem solve and to know, where to look when things arise.
Awesome. Hey, Megan or Tim, I think we've got a audience member with their hand raised. Do we have the ability to give audio to them, or do they need to put their question into the Q&A?
Let me see if I can do that.
I think I gave him the ability to talk, so I think he should just unmute himself and then he should be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Anthony. And just curious too, that CPA exam has been a struggle for me, passing one, not even 18 months, stuff like that. Just curious, with the MTax, with having a master in taxation, not having the CPA, does that also help you in your career? I think Florina was just discussing that, but is that very effective in your career, even if you don't have the CPA yet, but you got a master in taxation?
So I've got some thoughts on that. I can interject. Does anyone on the panel have any initial response?
I think the panel all have their CPAs, if I'm remembering right. So yes, so Stephen, that would be great if you want to answer.
So I think that the MT degree is sort of broader than what's reflected on just this panel, right? These three individuals have CPAs, and that's been useful for their career, but there's a lot of other roles that don't necessarily require the CPA that are also advanced by the MT degree. And we're going to have other webinars where we talk about other careers that the MT can benefit in, where, different, perhaps not in public accounting or in-house tax departments, but other areas where people are using their MT degrees. And I think there are also roles in public accounting and tax departments where you don't necessarily have to have an MT, but the degree would increase your chances of being looked at as a candidate for those roles. Awesome question. Thank you. So Bryan, we'll bounce back over to you here real quick. And once Bryan interjects, the other panelists have thoughts on this, please jump in, and I'll talk a little bit about my experience too here possibly. Everyone in our program, very, very infrequently is anyone doing this as a full-time program. Everyone's a working professional, most of whom have a number of years of experience and have sort of meaningful work experience in their past, and they're working currently. Oftentimes they have family commitments. Could you share how you were able to kind of juggle all that, balance that while you were doing not just the MT, but also the certificate?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And, I'm pretty well familiar with that. Most of my friends think that my wife and I are crazy. We have 5 kids. So,
I have 4, and I agree, you are crazy.
Yeah. So, and everyone has their, just a crazy career if you're in public accounting or, the financial services, field, right? It's challenging enough. I would say making sure whoever your support network is, that you have that behind you and that they're, you're all on board is definitely helpful. That you're kind of like-minded in the importance of the goal. And then just, just like with anything, finding the time, whether it's early in the morning, late at night, usually, blocking off time that you're going to dedicate to accomplishing the goal. And then I think some strategy as far as, you'll learn, or feel free to reach out to me or any of the panelists, I'm sure, can kind of help guide you to what classes, are notoriously going to be more demanding, and trying not to schedule those during, times in your personal work life that are, demanding from a work side of things, so that you're not just completely bombarded with, with those classes and on top of work, or some
We
of
all
the
know
things
you're
that kind of help
thinking
get me
about
through that.
partnerships right now.
Yeah. I don't want to call out any specific classes. Maybe that was an easy class for some people, but
Deanna, Florina, did you guys have any insights too in terms of juggling everything?
Well, I was lucky enough to do it pre-child, but I couldn't imagine more than one, though I had a friend who did have 4 in the program, and I don't know how we did it all, but my recommendation is you don't need to rush. I took the entire allotted time to finish this program. I knew everything was going to be really crazy, but I didn't want to just take classes just to take classes and to finish. I wanted to focus and get something out of each one of my classes. So I pretty much took one a semester, and that was it. So it's not a race. So if you want to take your time, probably less stressful.
Yeah, so to Deanna's point there, you can, in theory, you could finish the degree in 2 years and never take 2 classes at the same time. So you'd only ever be taking 1 class, and you can finish it in that time frame. But that's a lot of work, and the program, again, more flexibility. From the date you start, you've got a 5-year time period to complete everything. So you don't have to rush through and immediately get it all done. And so I didn't take 5, but like Deanna, so I had a child when I started. My wife had our second child as I actually had just begun the program. I took essentially the first 2 semesters off right away to focus on my career that was just starting as an attorney, and to make sure I was home a little bit and not get a divorce, essentially. But then I was able to go back in and manage the time. And I think now too, with the way we structure the program, it helps a little bit, again, in terms of those 8 start dates, the truncated semesters. And our hope is, if you're doing the work each week with the problem sets, the reading, and you're staying on top of that, and work obviously goes into that, but if you stay on top of it, then hopefully it's not as intense and you're not cramming 100 hours for the final, and the work is sort of more evenly spread out with our current structure. But it's absolutely a commitment, but it can be accomplished, and most people find it fairly manageable. Florina, did you have anything to add to that? I kind of jumped in there.
Yeah, no, I agree with what everyone said. And like Bryan said, you could be methodical about how you schedule your classes. I took advantage of taking some classes online, which just cut out the commute time. So I think that's helpful. And I really felt very supported throughout the program with my advisor that would check in on me and help me schedule my classes to make sure I'm completing it on time. Or even just reaching out to Megan and bouncing things off of her in terms of what classes to take next. So I can definitely say that in the program, you're well supported to help you make those types of decisions so that you make the most of the program, and that you can kind of manage as life events come up.
Yeah, and to Bryan's point, we have those conversations all the time when someone's like, this summer is going to be insane. I'm moving. I've got a child coming. I've got this crazy project. And we always walk people through, and we're like, okay, well, this class is one that students find the most enjoyable. It's 2 credits as opposed to 3. it's an area of the code that is not as overwhelming, perhaps say as partnerships, and kind of help them get through those things. So Deanna, I think you've touched on this a little bit, but in terms of the marketplace and looking to advance your career, how do you think the MT has made a difference for you?
Oh, I think it definitely makes you more marketable, not just from the knowledge that you gain, but from, it shows your willingness to put in the time and the effort into advancing your career and the drive. It's not an easy program. It's not necessarily a quick one, but it's definitely widely known, and there's a certain respect level associated with it. The courses are relevant to the times, intention to be able to apply all that knowledge into your day-to-day work, designed to get you to think about applying the legal aspects to your specific work, and thinking about the why, so that you can, like I said, apply it. And I think all that really does help you advance, not necessarily, jumping from place to place, but within your own company as well.
Does the panel have any other thoughts on that particular question? I think Deanna did a great job of addressing it. I mean, I think a lot of people are probably on here considering it. You go out to the marketplace and you just look at what the job postings are. As you approach a certain level in your career, if not required, you've got MT preferred, and again, it's a commitment. It takes time and effort, but it is a really great tool to help you advance your knowledge base, your client base, and your career.
Stephen, I just wanted to interject really quick. There is a question from someone in the audience who's asked something that I want to ask. And then I also wanted to share this feedback. So joining us in our participants today is another MT alum, which is super exciting. I'm so glad he's here to show his support. He graduated this past May. JD Naranjo, he's out in Texas. And he's just sent this through, and I wanted to share so everyone heard it. Hi, Nova GTP. The MT has benefited me without my CPA, which also has been challenging to complete. Since my graduation last May, it is planned that I will be head of tax this spring. #IgniteChange, #GoNova. So I just wanted to share that out loud for everyone. I don't know if they could read it in the Q&A, but JD, I'm so happy to hear from you. He was a great student, also paced his classes around his schedule, as you guys all shared. Made the travel out here in May, which was super special to walk in person. Also someone interested in SALT, and also like you, Florina, JD's done some teaching post commencement. So just wanted to share his words there.
Yeah, thank you so much, JD.
And then Stephen, there's a question. I don't know if you see it, or I can just ask it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them pulled up. You want me to read?
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So the first question is the curriculum mainly theory and research based? Are there classes that give you case studies that allow you to practice what you learn? For instance, a corporate class that would have you perform structure, mergers, and acquisitions and prepare the forms needed. So it's a great question. And all of the classes I mentioned before are sort of a problem-based approach. So most of them are not going to be tailored towards drafting specifically, but you are going to be taking the law and applying it to fact patterns that you'll see in practice. We do have a handful of classes that are more experiential in terms of learning and plan to add additional ones moving forward, but there are negotiating and drafting classes that do key in and focus on sort of what the documents are, what your letter of intent is going to look like, what provisions you would need to negotiate in a merger and acquisition. There's also a class that focuses on partnerships and drafting those provisions. There's classes that focus on the estate planning side and drafting the estate planning provisions. We also have, we had to temporarily sort of put it down during the pandemic, but we've got tax litigation training classes that we bring in tax court judges and they sit as a judge, and we bring in professionals from the IRS and from the outside and they get training. And our hope is to bring that back next year. So there's a very good mix, although we're hoping to add more experiential learning, but a good mix of sort of problem-based approaches and then also more hands-on writing, drafting, and things like that. Bear with me as I scroll down here and find the other questions. There's another specific question about an individual who's also interested in law school, but finds it difficult to step away, and asked if there's a significant difference in the curriculum between the LLM and the MT. So the JD program is dramatically different, but if you had a JD or did the JD LLM program, the tax aspects, the LLM aspect, and the MT are actually the exact same classes. So the LLM students are sitting right with the MT students, same professors, same quizzes, same tests, all the same curriculum. The MTs get to brag a little bit. They have to do 30 credits, and somehow the LLM lawyers get away with only 24 credits. So the MTs have the more rigorous degree. But other than that, the two programs are exactly the same. Now, the law school, dramatically different, right? That's a full daytime program with very different course structure.
Just to jump in to clarify really quick, most LLMs are 24 credits since you're coming to the degree with a Juris Doctor, and all master's degrees for accreditation reasons have to be 30 as a minimum. So those are accreditation reasons driving the difference in the credit hours. So I just wanted to cite a little bit of policy.
Yeah, we're not breaking any rules.
Right.
So another question here is, what makes the Villanova MT program stand out from other programs offered at other universities? Oh, we could do a webinar on just that. So we've talked a lot about the flexibility of the program, and our online program is something that we've had for a while now, that we spent a lot of time being very deliberate about. So this wasn't something we created in response to the pandemic. Back in 2013 and 2014, we implemented an online program and did a lot of research about what's the best way to keep the students engaged in the process. And having a camera in the back of a classroom watching a live class is really not a great way for most online learners to learn. So we've developed sort of this pedagogy that gets the students as engaged as possible. We try to work with our professors to ensure that they're engaging the students during the class time. And we feel all of that is a huge benefit for our program. We also have a staff, professors, curriculum that's second to none. We think there's a huge benefit in having the JDs and the LLMs together in the classes. So the list sort of goes on, and the reasons that we think that we are one of the best programs in the marketplace. And if you ever wanted to talk more specifically about your situation and whether we're the right fit, you could reach out to our staff or to me, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Sorry, I need to read some of these additional questions. Maybe Megan, maybe Catherine could talk about the admissions process for a minute, and I'll read these other questions, and then we'll circle back to them.
So yeah, actually, there is an admission question there I saw, as you're saying. So I was going to pivot to so Catherine can refer to the slides, and then we can close out with a few more questions at the end, if that works.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, awesome. Then let me just get my slides back up here. So we're going to pass this over to our colleague, Catherine Coker, who's one of our assistant directors of admission here, and she's going to go over our admission process and timeframes. Let me just share my screen again. Okay, and Catherine, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Megan. As she stated, my name is Catherine, and I am one of your main points of contact as you're looking at and exploring the program and as you're moving through the admissions process. So these are just kind of the highlights. Feel free to reach out directly after this webinar if you have additional questions, but first you do need to complete that online application. And we will send you a fee waiver code for that $50 application fee. We are looking for one letter of recommendation. It can be professional or academic. Obviously, if you have, 5 to 7 years of professional experience under your belt, we're going to be strongly preferred that you submit a professional recommendation. And what does that explicitly mean? Someone who's really familiar intimately with your work, such as a colleague or a supervisor, that can speak not just to your character strengths. We believe you're all amazing people, but we want to really know how they feel this program will help you in your career, and how it's going to benefit you, and the opportunities and the doors that it may open for you, and why they believe that this is a good fit for you and your career goals. So really, honing in on the program itself and its compatibility with your goals. Next is going to be that essay. And so similar to that letter of recommendation, we want to know what your professional goals are and why you think that the tax program will help you get there, or how you think that the tax program will help you get there, and sort of what you're looking to gain out of completing this program. We just want to make sure that this is the best fit for you and for us. Next is going to be that resume outlining your career so far, official transcripts from each institution where you have 6 or more credits. If you do have an international degree, we do require an evaluated transcript from a program like WES. So just be sure to be mindful of that. And then if you're a JD, I know this is the MT specific, but if you have that JD, got to be ABA accredited. But for those folks looking for that MT, which most of you are, we are looking for preferably a baccalaureate degree in like accounting, finance, or business related program from an accredited institution. We require the GMAT or the GRE unless you have a licensure like the CPA, enrolled agent, CFP, or you have extensive experience in the field, like 7+ years. We'll certainly look at waiving you out of that, and I can talk more specifically about opportunities to bypass that GMAT, GRE, depending upon your individual circumstances. But these are sort of our general admissions criteria for the most part. And we can move on to the next slide. So this is the time frame that we're looking at. So right now we're enrolling for summer, and that deadline is April 1st. And then your next deadline is going to be July 31st for fall. So we do enroll 3 times a year. We offer classes year round. So it's not a traditional academic, like when you're in undergrad where you can really only start in the fall, right? We have a plethora of students that join us in the summer as well as spring and fall. And so you won't be, the only one starting classes in summer or something like that. And I advise you guys, if you're thinking about the program, go ahead and get that application started. And if something changes down the line between now and early May when classes start, we can certainly discuss, a different term. We are rolling in terms of our decision. So once you get your application materials submitted, like that transcript, letter of recommendation, etc., we're going to go ahead and look at your application and send you a decision via email within about 5 to 7 business days. So you'll have plenty of time to prep and plan for getting started with the program. And we've got our program start dates down there. So the beginning of summer does start in early May, and our fall does start in August. So keep those dates in mind. And just as Stephen already mentioned, the program is very flexible. So if if the second half of summer or the second half of fall is really busy for you, don't feel like you need to delay enrolling in the program. You can certainly go ahead and start the program and then take an 8 weeks off, and then resume classes in the following term. And we can certainly discuss that in more detail one-on-one. And I think that's all. If we want to move on to further answering our questions.
So I think the one other question that was up that we hadn't specifically addressed was about the online program and whether it is asynchronous or if the classes are live and the students have to participate. And so we do not have any fully asynchronous courses. So the students on our online program once a week, either Wednesday evening or Thursday evening, do have to log in and participate in a live session with the professor for either 60 or 90 minutes. There was some question then, like, how do the quizzes and how do the exams work? We have an online system that the programs run through called Blackboard, and the quizzes are all, and the tests are all done through Blackboard. So you do all that remotely. You're not here on campus at any time for those. And there's certain times set aside where you have to accomplish those. But there is a live session for each class each week. Right, so I don't think we have any other questions. People can feel free to pop others in there. I'll stick around for another 3 or 4 minutes. We do have another webinar coming up related to MT degrees. That's going to be on February 23rd, I think. Catherine, is that right? Yes, February 23rd. That's going to be MT degrees in the financial field, so wealth management, investment management. So please feel free to join us for that also if you're interested. We'll also have a number of other webinars throughout the semester that'll be more substance-based, and we'll offer CE and CLE.
Yeah,
So
I know.
oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. For our February webinar, we have 3 more alumni panelists lined up. As you mentioned, one of them is someone who's earned our MT. She does not have her CPA. She has built her career in the financial services industry. So she'll have like a whole different take than our 3 experts who joined us today. And then we do have someone who is a LLM alum, but she works with high net worth individuals. She doesn't necessarily advise in tax, but works for a wealth planning firm. And then we have someone coming from a law firm. So it'll be a nice flavor of different careers in wealth management. So if it's a field you're thinking about, you'll hear from 3 different perspectives, and how the LLM and MT both have helped those folks along the way.
Thank you, Megan. And Deanna, Florina, Bryan, thank you all so much for participating today and sharing about your career and your experience with the program. It's really appreciated, very valuable for us and for the prospective students.
Thank you so much, guys. Good to see everyone. I'm glad to see you all doing so well.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And as Catherine mentioned, we'll follow up with a fee waiver code and this recording once it's ready. Take care.
Panelists, you have to shake Megan down for a V-Tax. You didn't get one when you graduated. Say that.
I got one.
Yes, please.
Oh, so just Deanna's here. No, I'm just kidding.
But I'll take another.
I never got one either, so I'll be sending you.
All right,
my-
well, we'll be putting them in the mail to you. We're putting them in the mail to you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.